So welcome. My name is David Martinez. This is my colleague John Yaste. And we're going to talk to you today about the ArcGIS API for Python. Out of curiosity, how many of you are currently using it today? Okay, some. Okay, who's using ArcGIS Pro? Okay, good. Just a little quick poll. So what we strive to show you today is obviously, hopefully you learned something new from this session. At the end of the session, we'll take questions. If we can't get to all the questions, we'll be in the developers island on the showcase floor. If you have more questions you want to, kind of talk about in deeper discussions, you can find us there. But hopefully we can answer a majority of the questions. But those who, we cannot, feel free to approach us anywhere. Okay, so if you're not familiar, so what is the ArcGIS API for Python? So we wrote it, obviously with the Python language. Basically what we did is we took our REST API, wrapped that around our ArcGIS API for Python, and basically created a bunch of modules, classes, methods, to tie into what we call your Web GIS. So think of your Web GIS as your organization, such as ArcGIS Online, or your ArcGIS Enterprise instance, okay? So within there, you can grab content, you can publish content, you can automate creation of stuff, you can create visualization analysis types applications using Jupyter Notebooks. You could do all kinds of cool stuff which you can in Python using the ArcGIS API for Python. So at a high glance, what does it look like? So on the right-hand side, these are our modules. Think of these as our libraries that we have. It's a very modular API. You can grab these independent modules that you need, load them at that particular area in which you want to execute, such as if you want to do geo-enrichment, maybe you want to do some kind of geometry or geocoding, you can call these modules within the API. You might notice why the GIS module, maybe thinking why is the GIS module bigger than the others? Well, that's kind of where we start. GIS module ties into user content, search information, and of course the map. That's how you call the map from it. So right now, currently, we're in our 1.4.2 release. We're going to be releasing our 1.5 release, hopefully around the first week of August. I think we just released a beta release of 1.5 this morning. This morning. So we have that out, so if you want to try that. So basically what that is, it's incorporating 3D capability into it, where you could do 3D scenes and layers. We'll discuss a little more about that. So this is questions that we get asked pretty often. Is the ArcGIS API for Python going to replace ArcPy? The answer is no. One's for your Web GIS, right? Those who are familiar with ArcPy, that's for desktop GIS stuff, right? So ArcGIS API for Python, you're going to use it against your portal. You're going to use it against online. It's based on Python 3x, right? You could do things such as analysis, portal admin, content, all kinds of different stuff. ArcPy is basically for our client applications for desktop or for Pro, and it's mostly focused around geoprocessing tasks. And of course, you could do some map automation. So what we have done is we built the API to work with 4 different personas. So there's if you have a particular workflow, it's not one size fits all. It meets these 4 different workflows. So the first is org administrators. So anyone who's responsible for creating administration type tasks within the enterprise itself, updating groups, adding users, etc. The other one is content publishers, right? Are you interested in creating maps, publishing content, automating that? The next one is analysis and data scientists, right? So we incorporate other third-party libraries into the ecosystem to allow you to do that. And the last one is more for power users and developers. Get deep dive into code and kind of do things with other more sophisticated libraries. So let's talk about who's it for. So the first one is org administration, right? So if you're org admin that's responsible for it, you can use it to automate certain functionality. And we'll get a little more details regarding that with some demos. And of course, content publishing. Of course, we always want to automate content publishing, especially if we have repetitive tasks. It's really built for that as well. And then, of course, as we start to explore and encounter other data sets, whether they're small or large, you want the ability to do other analysis, right? So things as geoanalytics, large vector data, right, spread across many nodes. You can call the Python API and do that. Same thing with raster analysis. There's a module built for that. And then, of course, we have to support spatial analysis and other kind of GP tasks, okay? And then, of course, a developer can tie into all those different ones and exploit the various capabilities they need to accomplish with it. So when we talk about automating Web GIS management, so we're talking about populating portal with users, groups. Maybe these are one-time tasks. Maybe these are multiple tasks that you do, or repetitive tasks. You need to clone information. You need to update curated content. You need to look for broken links, make sure things are working. Those are all totally possible with it. You can also create reports of users, seeing how your context, see how your information's being posted, who's using it, what's not being active. And then, of course, I think some of the very powerful things is how about the ability to automate creation of content? It goes to that repetitive task. What if we want to automate content publishing during off-peak hours, right? You have the ability to do that. Certain things with tiles and features. You can have a feature layer maybe in a production environment that you don't want users to touch, and then maybe you have another system that's your read-only access, but you got to keep those two synchronized. You can't hear me?
Yeah, it seems to be pointed away from your mouth a tiny bit.
Okay.
It sounds great in the room, but not in the recording.
All right. Is that better?
That should be better.
Okay, thanks. So what if you wanted to create two services in sync? How would you do that? Well, the Python API, you can do that. There's methods in there such as override and update that you can accomplish that. And John will show you an example of that. And of course, you have to have the ability to access other big data tools. Maybe they're not necessarily built into the Esri technology. Maybe you want to utilize third-party Python libraries. What's great about Python is it's a rich ecosystem of very welcoming, of a welcoming community where people are creating different libraries, and you can mix and match and bring those into our ArcGIS API for Python to do some pretty sophisticated stuff. What if you wanted to do some advanced charts or graphs? You can totally do that within either the Jupyter Notebook environment, right? Because you need a visualization component. And of course, the ability to share that information with your peers. And what you get from that is basically ArcGIS plus Jupyter, and it's all good, right? Because we have this thing called Jupyter Notebooks. So we get a lot of questions, well, do I have to use Jupyter Notebooks? Well, not necessarily. Think of Jupyter Notebooks as just the view, right? Your UI. So you want to output and you want to look at something, you can use it in that fashion. Another scenario is maybe you don't want a view. Maybe you're automating the content creation of different services and generating a web map for some disastrous or some, you have some application you need to create quickly. You don't have to necessarily do that with the Jupyter Notebooks. You can bring that directly into your IDE and call the library from there. So there's two folds from there, right? So just think of Jupyter Notebook as just your view, right? Okay. And in case you don't know, the map in the Jupyter Notebook uses our JavaScript widget, right? So we're calling our API, and then we're loading that widget on there and loading content on there, okay? So what we like to say is it all starts with your GIS, right? Because whether it's your Web GIS, which is an online, or your instance of ArcGIS Enterprise, right? At some point, you're going to have a map. At some point, you're going to have to authenticate to that organization. So basically what you do is you import the ArcGIS, right, .gis, and you import GIS, and you say, all right, for this one, we're doing a connection to an instance of our del dev map.arcgis, and then we're passing some credentials. And then we're saying, all right, our enterprise GIS in this instance is our Python playground, right, which accessing portal, okay? And then from there, what you can do is you can start, from that same library, you can start searching for content. So supposedly I wanted to look for items within San Diego. I could simply say, hey, gis.content.search, give it a parameter, throw it in a for loop, and display what items from that results are. And then you can grab from that array and add the content you needed to the map, or do whatever you want with it. Pretty simplistic, but pretty powerful because it's really 2 lines of code. And then what you can do from that is you can start to manipulate the map, and you can have multiple instances of the map within that notebook if you choose. And then you can start adding layers of content on there and doing other things such as analysis. So the importance of the GIS model, it's pretty powerful because from that you get content, right? Whether you're adding content, updating, deleting, sharing, you get the ability to work with groups, right? Create, etc., update, share, reassign. You also have the ability to generate users, right? Maybe this is a one-time task, maybe it's repetitive. Also assign roles. And then also too, you have the ability to use the manager method the manager class to call different methods such as create, get, and search, right? So as you're looking for content, you want to have those capabilities there at your disposal. So let's look at an example of that. So it's pretty simple. So you can, with Pro, the reason why I was asking how many people are using it with Pro is because with Pro, you get the ArcGIS API Python as part of it. It comes packaged with it. So you don't have to install anything. You can simply go into your ArcGIS Pro instance. There will be a command prompt, and you just call. So if I was to go here, ArcGIS, you're going to see, we'll go down here. You'll see there's this Python command. You can click on that, run Jupyter Notebook, and it'll run for you. And then what happens is you'll see this Jupyter Notebook running here, right? This is a service running for you. And by default, it's going to run on your local host, which is your machine, on port 8888, right? 8888. And then it's going to, however, in this example, I have a tree structure with my samples in there. And you can add folders in there. So basically, this is what the view looks like for your notebooks, right? And then another alternative is, let's say you don't want to run that environment. You maybe want to do more little playground trial and test. You can go to notebooks.esri.com, right? And this is basically our samples and labs that are contained within this environment. And, oh, what is that? Let me refresh this real quick. Okay. So this is our stuff on our developers pages, but you can go in here and grab one of these samples and play with it, right? And it saves to that. So it's another area you can do it. But let's go ahead and just create a quick sample. Okay, so this is what the environment looks like. Here, this is running in code. You could do markdown as well. So maybe you want like bold areas of category to talk about your analysis or story. You can add markdown above it or below the cells, and these are all just cells. So let's add some comments here, and we want to import ArcGIS, right? And we're going to import ArcGIS .gis and import the main GIS module, okay? And in this instance, what we're going to do is we're just going to do an anonymous connection to our GIS, right? So I'm not passing any parameters within that method right there. We'll show you an example how to do that. So basically what I can do now is I could do Shift-Enter to run the cell, and it goes to the next one, right? So what's good is if you don't see any errors come up there, that's pretty good, right? We're getting here. So next thing we want to do is we want to create a map, of course, right? So let's give it a variable called map, and let's equal that to GIS dot, just do tab. And you can see the properties associated with that. Let's go ahead, GIS.map, and then let's give it some parameters since we're all in beautiful San Diego here. Let's give this San Diego, California, right? All right, we got that, and now we want to load our map, so let's just call map, Shift-Enter, and there we go. So now we have our widget here, right? And we're also into JavaScript widget. That works. There we go. Okay. All right. So now that we got the map, we want to start adding other information here. What are some of the things you can do with it, right? So you can call map dot. Let's call center, right? And I happen to know the area we're at, so we could say, okay, we're at 32.71, not 31, and we're at negative 117.15, right? And then we can say control. So now we're at that center point there. Next thing we could do is we could do a zoom. So let's say we want to zoom into an area. All right. So now we're zooming into an area or study area. So we can also call other different parameters. So maybe we want to look at the list of available base maps, right? So as you can see, these are all the base maps that come out of the box with the with the map itself. You can also add vector tiles too. We support that as well. You just need to load the layer. So suppose we want to change the base map. We could do map dot base map. And then we could say, okay, that equals, let's do streets. Is that right? Streets, night, dash vector, right? And then we could just hit enter. If we go back up, our map changes, right? Pretty quick, pretty simple, right? Not too much lines of code. And then what we can do is we can start incorporating other information in here. So let's add some stuff to that. So what do we do in San Diego, right? We eat, right? I feel like we all go and look for the best places to eat. So let's look for what San Diego has to offer. So let's give it a variable name of restaurant underscore content. And let's use the GIS dot content dot, let's do content dot search, right? And let's search San Diego restaurants, AURENTS. And let's search for item types of feature layers. Okay. Let's go, I don't want that. Let's see, feature layer. Okay, and I want a default return of items. We can specify that. Let's just say 5. And then let's see what that list looks like. So we just say, hey, okay, let's get our variable and just call it now that we have it set. And there we go. So now we have somewhat some information. So we've got a return of 3 feature layers. So now what we could do is say, okay, which one do you want to decide? So let's just grab the first one in the array. But better yet, we can start importing other modules in here to get more discoverable information such as the metadata. Since right now we only have title and feature layer type, let's import a different module. What's come standard with Python is this ipython.display, and it basically allows us to give a better representation of our data in a view. So let me just call this display, and what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, our REST GIS content, let's say we put this in a for loop and say for item in REST underscore content, right? We're going to say display the item, right? Right. So now we should have a better view of some metadata. So we can see, okay, last modified, how many views, okay. So I'm thinking what we want to do now is we want to add this first one in the array, right, from our list. Okay, so basically what we do now is we're just going to get the first item. So let's give another variable called rest, and let's get our rest underscore content, right? And then now what we can do is, so now we got rest underscore content. We can add that to the map. Hit tab, and there you go. There's a class to do that. And then now what we do is we just say, okay, that variable, call rest. Hit enter. We scroll back up. There we go. Now we have our restaurant data sets on the map. Okay. Okay. So as we scroll down here, other things that we could do is, remember I was talking about it's very modular, the API itself. So we can start adding other modules to the environment. So let's import the ArcGIS Geocoding widget. So if you go to ArcGIS, from ArcGIS, you can see all the various modules here, right? So the one that we want is the geocoding. And from that, we're going to import geocode, right? And then from there, we're going to have a variable downtown San Diego equals, you guessed it, geocode, right? And what we want to look is you could pass parameters to the geocode service to say, oh, I want to look in the gas lamp district, right? And if I could type here, and so gas lamp, and of course that's in San Diego. I'm not sure how many other gas lamps there are. Hit CA, and then we want to return results, okay? And now what we could do is, now that we have that, let's add another map, because remember I said you can add multiple maps to this, right? So GIS dot map, and then basically what we do is we just say, all right, let's call this downtown SD, right? Yep. And then we say, okay, map.1. Right, so that should load. There we go. So now we're in the gas lamp district. Okay. So now what we can do is we can start getting a little more detailed about information we want. So I'm not going to type all this. I'm just going to copy and paste. I cheated before because I don't want to type this whole entire code out. But basically what we're going to do now is we're going to look for restaurants, right, with this variable name. We're going to call the geocoding. We're not looking for a particular restaurant, but in here I could say, you know what, maybe I want Starbucks. I could put this in here where it says none, put Starbucks in double quotes. But basically I'm saying, okay, I'm downtown right here, SD, which is my map. I want from this extent, I'm looking for, of course, when you're in California, you always got to eat Mexican food, right? Because you can't get Mexican food in the other states. Well, that's from my experience. Texas, South Mex, come on. But so you can get different categories here, right? So what I'm doing here is, all right, I want category Mexican food. I want max locations. I want return only 100 coming back from this. And then I'm saying, all right, we got to throw in a for loop here. So for restaurants, in restaurants, I want to present a pop-up. So if my user clicks on it, I want to present them with some information, right? So basically you're saying, okay, for title, for this restaurant variable, I want the attributes and I want the name of the place, which is called place name. Okay, so that's going to be your pop-up title. And then you want to provide some content. So for content, you want this is just a string, and you're going to call this restaurant attributes phone. And then since we don't want to put two strings in the same field, we add a line break here, right? And then basically we're going to call address, restaurant attributes, and then that will be the address. Name would be place address, okay? The next thing we do is we call map1, because this is our map1.draw, restaurants. We need a location, and then we have a pop-up, right? So there we go. There's our restaurants, and there's our pop-up, right? Name, phone, address, etc., right? So you can grab all that. Another way you can do too is, let's say you wanted to know the attributes that are returned from a particular, like geocoding service. You can do something like this, attributes. So if I wanted to know what all the attributes are being returned, I can say, attributes, this would be 0, and that would be attributes, and that should run. And there we go. So these are all the field names being returned, because you're probably thinking, well, how did you know those field names, right? So you could tell place name here. You can get all this information from there, right? All the attributes returned. Okay. So let's get back to our presentation here. Okay. Now what we have showed you so far is just a general non-credentialing, just an anonymous connection to a GIS, right? I didn't provide any credentials, but let's face it, we have private information, whether we're using authentication via either through the portal, or we're using our users through LDAP, or we're using something as Active Directory or anything like that. You have the ability to incorporate that into your credentials as you authenticate to your system. So we support different authentication schemes within the Python API, because we know anonymous is not going to work all the time. So one of the workflows that we're talking about is org administrators, right? And what do I mean by that? So let's say, for instance, I have an enterprise, right? So I got tasked before the weekend. My boss says, hey, you know what? I need to stand up enterprise, right? Well, I can go get a chef script, run enterprise, call the certain modules I need, and load it. But now, as we know, am I going to manually put all the users in there and all the content, right? I'd rather automate stuff, right? I'm getting lazy. Let's just automate everything. So I've been tasked with providing some groups in here for this particular enterprise. Now this enterprise is running on my local machine. Been tasked with providing some content. And then more importantly, I need to get some users in here. As I'm just a lonely guy by myself in here, so I need some friends, right? So how do I get information in there to add users and groups, right? So I have a list here, just for demo purposes, of the users, right? By first name, last names, their roles, and assigned states which they're part of, and groups in roles, okay? And then I also have another thing called groups that are going to define which makes up my enterprise, right? And then, of course, I don't have any UI for this particular org, right? There's no banner, there's no graphic to give it some identity. So how would we go through that process of doing this? Well, just for this scenario, what we would do is I would run this probably, because I don't need any UI coming back, but if I'm just going to run a script and it just populates, it doesn't show well for demo purposes. But in this instance, what we could use is something from the Jupyter Notebook just to show you how that process works to populating content, right? Because normally I just put this in ID and put it on a scheduler and just hit run and then be done with it. So basically what we're doing here is we're importing the ArcGIS import GIS module, right? And because I don't trust you guys, I'm using this thing called password.getPass, which basically prompts me to enter my credentials, right? So you don't see my password as opposed to hard coding them. Since I'm going to be working with some CSV, I need to import a CSV file, a CSV module to read that. And of course, I'm also reusing some JSON from web maps. Okay, so if we run this, it's prompting me, these are my credentials for that particular enterprise system. So I'm going to put those in, hopefully that works. Okay, and here I'm passing the URL of that org, my username, and for that GIS, and for that GIS method, I'm passing those parameters, URL, username, my password, and then I'm doing verify underscore cert false because I don't have SSL. All right, so there we go. And now invalid token. See, this is what happens when you try to do demos on the fly. I think I forgot my password. So let's see. All right, let's see. Okay. Oh, yeah, I don't know. Let me see. All right. I got to check real quick. All right, yeah. All right, so you guys saw that high-tech password there, right? So let's see if this works. Did you see it? Let's see. Oh, you better work now. Okay. All right. So nothing's going to happen right now until we call these methods at the end. But I'll walk you through what's happening here. So first thing we're going to do is you're going to notice this is a markdown, right? Right. So I could go in here and say, all right, you could say this is code or markdown. So basically, this just has an ampersand space, numeric symbol, whatever, I forget what it's called, but you can just pass that and give it a size factor for that for your area, for your title. And then here I'm just saying, okay, for this create groups, I want to open this group CSV. I'm going to use this dictionary reader to read that CSV. And then I'm going to do a for loop through these groups to create it, do some output for print, show you the results. If it's a problem, I'm going to throw an exception error right there. Okay, so that would create the groups for us. As opposed to me manually adding the users, I can automate this by looping through the users using this create users method. Same thing, use a dictionary reader, go through the users, and get those results, and I can assign the create method for the username, password, all that, get into the system, add the groups to that particular to those particular users. Then I can search for the groups, right, for those particular usernames. Same thing, print success or have an exception error. And then next thing I want to do is I want to assign content for those in their territories. So I have this simple read template web map that I'm passing from my local directory structure as a web map file, and I'm reading that, and I'm looping through each user and publishing that content associated with that user, right? You can see here I'm giving some web map property titles, etc. here. All this just straight from JSON. Then gis.content.add, adding these web map properties up here, right? Then I'm assigning them, giving you looking at the results here for username, same thing, throw an exemption if it's error. Next thing we want to do is we don't have anything that identifies this portal that it's my theme. So basically, I'm calling the set theme method to read these folders, to grab some logos, backgrounds, etc. And then here, I'm calling the setup theme, right? So let's just where we are right here. So let's just run these real quick. Shift enter. And we won't see anything until we get to the end right here. All right. So If it works, you're going to see something like, should start kicking off right here. If it fails, all right, there we go. So you see I'm calling these create group methods, themes, it's grabbing all this. You can see it's starting to create user information here, adding to groups. I only have 10, so it's pretty quick. This is just for just visualization purposes. And if I go back here, refresh my instance of Enterprise, now I have a banner, right? If I go to groups, I should have some groups coming in. Hopefully. There we go, we got some groups, right? And if we go to my organization here, I should have some friends there, now part of my org. So now I have some people who is part of my org. So that's an illustration of how you can automate your GIS, right? Using scripts with the Python API. It's built for that. So now, let's turn it over to my colleague John, which is going to go into a little more detail about the various workflows we have.
Thanks, Dave. Hi. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the workflow or the groups of people that the API has been designed for, and go through a couple different workflows, primarily about sort of administrating an organization or a portal and getting information about different items in the portal, and then also publishing maybe straight from a CSV file and doing some overwriting of content, and then show you some resources that go into some really detailed examples of analysis, that kind of GIS data analysis role, and some more advanced notebooks. All this stuff is accessible to you right now. You can leave here because you're so excited to go do this that you will go check out these resources I tell you about and just analyze away. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to a portal. This is an instance of ArcGIS Enterprise that's been set up, and I'm going to attempt to type my password in front of you and see if I typed it and spelled it correctly, which I did. So I'm connected to an enterprise instance, right? I'm just using the username, password, credentials. Here's my username, and the password's hidden by this get pass module. I'm now connected to a portal. And so now I'm going to access tell me the URLs of the services that I have in this portal that I can do different tasks with. So I'm going to access this portal here, and then there are different managers, we call them, or helpers off the GIS module. Dave went into the GIS module, and when you type the name of the module or the variable you've given the GIS, you have these properties that come up. And these are all properties that are off this GIS module, and in the documentation, the API reference documentation, we refer to these as managers. You have a content manager, you have a groups manager, and you have the properties of the GIS, and then you also have a users manager. So you get access to those things by instantiating a GIS. And so I'm going to use the GIS properties to tell me the URLs of all the services that I have access to in this module. And then it's configured not just with services that are hosted in my portal, but also things that are available through ArcGIS Online. And so now these URLs, if you need to send them to developers, whoever needs to use them, you have them easily accessible. I'm going to connect to another portal that is an ArcGIS Online instance. And this way we're going to see sort of metadata about my portal, like, okay, how many credits do I have left? And if what I'm going to do going to burn me out, right? So I'm going to just check the number of credits I have. Other things I can do, like I've got this, I mentioned this users manager. There's a special user variable named me that you can set to a variable, and who's ever logged in has all the properties that are accessible to that particular user. And there's my very bland portal admin profile that I've done nothing with. So here it is, right? Default profile that's available to you. What kind of access do I have to this portal? Public. I've got access to everything inside this portal. What role am I? I'm the admin, right? When was I created? What the hell does that mean, right? So, okay, information returned from portal is returned in Unix time, right? And in milliseconds. So you've got to divide that by 1,000 and use other modules to get a human readable piece of information about any date that's stored in portal. So there. I was created on February 24th, 2018. I've matured really fast. So, information about feature services in the portal. Right, so I'm using the content manager here. Let me see, is this? Wow. Okay, the content manager available just as a property, dot syntax in Python off the GIS module. The content manager has a search method. There's a query parameter in that search method that I can do all kinds of crazy stuff with to narrow down my results. But because I don't want to do anything that fails, I'm just going to use a wildcard. Right? And by fails, it means I don't know the proper syntax. So I'm just going to return everything. Right? But I'm going to limit it to 25, and I'm just give me feature services, just items that are backed by feature services. So I run that. Oh, I already did that. And there they are, right? There are 25 of them. But if we see, these are all owned by the Living Atlas, right? I don't care about the Esri people that own stuff. I want to know about the people in my portal. So I'm going to change my search criteria. I'm going to say, keep the Esri Living Atlas stuff out of this list, right? So, and return me feature services. And I don't have a limit on the number I want returned, but just don't show me the Esri stuff. So now I see my owner is people who now are in this organization, people that own content. And so let's go down further, and I'm going to do the same thing with, okay, this time I'm going to change the item type, and I'm going to search for web maps. Right? So there we go. Same thing. These are all the Esri web maps. I want my org people's web maps. What are they doing? What do they own? So this is owned by people that are owners, that are users in my org, and the web maps they own. And then I'm going to, okay, just draw me one. Give me a quick preview of one. And here we go. So there's a map that's drawn. And if you know Python, all these managers, all these searches, they return to you a list of portal items that fit the criteria you turn. And then you just go through the standard Python indexing to get the individual items from that list. Right? So this just happens to be the 13th item in my list, right? Because computer nerds start at 0. And web map number 5 is a different one. So now you've got a list of all the web maps in there, right? So that's just one particular a list of how you can get some users and web maps and things they own. Let's go into a different org, and let's remember our password. Okay, and this is an org that I have set up over the years, and at various events I've went and worked at. There's all kinds of people that I've granted access into this portal and have done stuff with it. And like any good admin, I've done nothing with it since. So I have no idea what's going on in this portal. So let's just take a look at what's happened here, right? So, okay, tell me all the users that enter in the last time they logged in. Right? And as I explained, I use my handy-dandy Python skills to access a different module and report my date in human-readable form. Like, I don't care about your Unix integer. So here's my users and when they last logged in, right? So I've got people who haven't touched my portal since 2014. I should get rid of them, right? I'll do that after this session. But, and I've got people who were introduced to my portal before I was born. So I don't know how that happened. So I've got some looking into things to do on this portal. Right now I can, and this is, I'm going to search through all my users and just tell me what roles do they belong to. And that's a way to get just a quick list of the active roles within my organization. and I've run that cell. And something about these notebooks that I don't know if you noticed that, but when they're processing, there's a little asterisk here. And that's how you know that your computer's thinking about whether it's going to answer your question correctly. And then this dot will also be solid when the notebook is doing something. When it turns to a number, it's done. So these are the roles that are in my organization. And lastly, we're going to print out, okay, now tell me, all my users print out everything they own, what type of thing they own, and when they last modified that item, and how many people are viewing these things. So, right, because I tried to make you see it better, now my format's all jacked up. But so here is a list of, that's information. So if you're as an admin, you can quickly get all this kind of information from the users in your portal. What type of items they own, when they last modified it, what things are busy, what aren't. You know, what is getting a lot of views and what isn't. And maybe there's some criteria in your organization that you're going to go wipe stuff out that nobody's looking at. So that's some more things about looking at items in the portal and finding out what's going on with them. One of the big things that you've all hammered me about since I joined this team the last couple conferences I've been at is, okay, I've got feature services, I need to know what web maps they're in. Or I've got web maps, I need to know what's in them. And so we're going to go through and try and do that. Right? So again, we're going to connect to this online portal. There's the little star. It's thinking about what's going to let me connect. And I added a little print line to say, yes, I'm connected. Get me all the feature layers, right? And leave the Living Atlas stuff out of here. Just give me my list, and I'm going to max it out. Give me everything. I've got 159 feature layers in this particular organization. Now, I want to know, okay, I know in my portal there's different types of items. Some of them are hosted in my organization. Some of them are referenced from other sources. I need to quickly know, I want to know the service item IDs for the ones that are hosted. Because I know I can use that item ID in different ways in my other APIs or other scripts. I can use that item ID to do other things with it. So here is a quick list of items in my portal and their service item ID, a way to get it. And I cheated a little bit. I'm not searching all these layers because we'd all be sitting here for a little while. And I cheated and limited what was searched. But you can see, okay, there's service item IDs. There's some, okay, this one's referenced, so I don't own this. I don't host it. I'm probably not going to be able to do much with it. This one I can't even get to, so what's that doing? I got to go look at that later. So anyway, so now that's just some quick code to search through your list of feature layers and retrieve some information about them. And now that I have some service item IDs, I'm going to do that again, but okay, now I'm only really interested in the hosted feature layers, right? The stuff that's in my org and using the database resources I have direct access to and that I can do something with, that I own, right? And now I've got the service item ID, and I had it print me the URL to that service, because that URL can be used within the API in many different places to construct different objects that are in the API. Like you can use that URL to create things from scratch and then do further analysis or on those layers. So now I've got the URLs and the service item IDs for those. All right, and as I told you, the hammering about web maps, what's in my web maps, right? And so I'm going to create a list of web maps, and I've got 159 of them, and I'm going to now, okay, just real quick, show me the web maps, what layers are in them, what URL are those layers referencing. And so there we go, right? Some of these are using hosted layers, right? And you can quickly see, okay, hosted layers are those prefaced with that services1.arcgis.com syntax. Other layers are coming from elsewhere. I don't own them. These are just referenced layers. There, I've got a lot of metadata that can be pretty useful for certain types of workflows from my web map. And then So we've got a list of service item IDs. All right, what items in my portal are consuming that service? Is that thing being used? Here's a quick way I can use a service item ID to tell me what web maps is this service in. So that'll take a minute to run. And so something else that I can do in a web map, so I've got that whole list of web maps that we talked about, right? So and it was 159 web maps. And standard Python syntax and code, you can index through that list to get the individual web maps and do some more examination of what's in those web maps. And so as soon as this little piece of code finishes, which should be just a minute or so, we can go and then look through at random that list of web maps and print out some additional metadata about the services and the layers and things that are in there, if this code ever finishes. So there it is, right? So all right, that particular feature layer of that item ID is in that web map. And now I'm giving a particular web map, tell me what kind of stuff is in this web map. And there we go. So, and let's press our luck and try again. There's my typing mistake. All right, so there we go. Web map layers. Something else another variation of this, I'm going to search for a very specific feature layer in my org, right? So I've used the search syntax to limit, give me just that Toronto feature layer collection. If that feature layer has any other layers in it, tell me about those layers. There they are. And now I'm going to use a subset of my list of web maps that I cheated before this presentation, and I know that those layers are in one of these web maps. So tell me what web maps are consuming those layers, right? So different ways that you can get different information about feature layers and web maps and what's consuming what. And so those are some pretty popular ways to provide administrator information for your org. Yeah?
Can you search web app? What is that?
Yeah, like item type, when you search, where'd it go? The query parameter, you can use all kinds of syntax. It's the REST API search syntax. There is an item type parameter for search, and you can use any valid item type within the portal. You can limit that query to those kind of item types. Feature service, web applications, web maps, the list goes on, right? The REST API item types, documentation, all those are valid input parameters to that item type parameter. Okay, so done with that. So that's web maps and feature layers. Okay, so we talked a little bit so Dave went through kind of an automated workflow of creating a bunch of web maps from some source JSON data that he had. So what I'm going to do is just do something that's a little bit more straightforward and just I've got a CSV file with coordinate information. I need to add this to my portal and publish it. And so first I'm going to connect to my portal. So I'm connected to my portal. I'm going to create a variable that this is a CSV path on my system. I'm going to set up some properties for this item that's going to result in the portal. And I'm going to use the content manager to add this item to the portal. So, and then I'm going to go check, did that add? There it is. That's the item. I added that CSV to my portal. Now I want to create a feature layer from it. I'm going to publish it. There's a publish method off any item, or off an item that can be published in the API. There's a publish method. So you use the publish method to take an item and create a service from it that then you can consume inside wherever you're going to consume the services. So that will be published shortly, and now I have that as a feature layer collection instead of just a CSV item. And what I can do is search for that and use Python, listen, okay, give me a real quick geographic preview of what that data is. Right, so I added a map, and there's the data. Another last workflow I'm going to go through, this is how you can update a feature service that you have online. Right, so here I'm going to again connect to my portal. I'm going to add an item from a CSV data set of all the haunted houses in the US. And I'm going to prove to you that it's not there right now. Right, so there's no layer that has ghosts in the title. I add that item. Now I've got the ghostly locations in the US. CSV item. There it is in my portal. I'm going to prove it to you. There it is. I go back here. I publish it. So there it is. It's baking. We've got a feature layer being created. And then what I'm going to do is, okay, I got some more haunted house data, right? What I know is that in West Virginia, I've got no ghost tours or haunted houses in there. So we see nothing in West Virginia there. And I happen to know, right, and my current count of features, 709. I got some new data that is updated. There's some more haunted houses in the US. And they're in West Virginia. I know that because I saw the data. So I'm going to use the feature layer collection object from the Python API, import it from the features module, and then I'm going to use that item that I just created and instantiate it as a feature layer collection, and then I'm going to use the manager property of that feature layer connection to overwrite it with new data. And then I'm going to prove to you that it worked. And then I'm done, and we can ask questions.
Is there an append operation as well as overwrite?
There is. And so, yeah, and then I'm going to go show you some resources that you can go and look through. And you can get all these, we've got a ton of different samples available, 728. So now I've got more features. What do you think? Are we going to see things in West Virginia now? Bam. Done. So, some resources that you should know about. developers.arcgis.com/Python. There is a ton of resources out here. Everything that we were talking about is covered in these guides. There's multiple guides on how to get up and running and how to get started. We didn't talk a lot about installation and getting your hands on the API. If you are a pro user, it's in your system by installation. If you're using a Mac or Linux machine, you can get it. You can install it pretty easily through the Conda Python package distributor. This sample notebooks, this is divided up by the roles we talked about, and there's all kinds of different samples in here. For you power users and developers who are way beyond what I can help you with, there's a bunch of samples in there. The GIS analysts and data science, there's a number of notebooks in here that you can download for yourself or go directly to the GitHub repository. And each of these sample notebooks, you can go press this try it live button, and it takes you out to a live server that you can just run through it and get your hands dirty with it, playing around. So that's a quick intro to the API for Python. There's a ton more you can do with it. But we are down in the developers island right in front of Demo Theater 8. So door A is the exhibition hall, straight back, right before Demo Theater 8. The API for Python people are there all week, and I'll be glad to point you to somebody that can help you out. Questions?
Is there a breakdown of what resources are available to publisher and admin accounts? You can't add users as publisher.
Right. So if you connect as a publisher, right, the properties that are accessible to you are going to reflect the permissions that you have. So when you make a connection to to Portal and say you're a publisher, that you go to whatever you've named your GIS.properties or do GIS.tab, and then if you do GIS.properties.tab, it'll show you a list of what you can start to do. So there's not a list, so to speak, of, hey, here's what publishers have, here's what admins have, because that changes by Portal. But you can easily get that through that GIS module and its properties manager.
Can you automate these scripts easily?
Yeah, like this, what we were showing, this Jupyter Notebook environment, is just one of many that you can use, right? So I don't know how familiar with when you create these environments, or when Pro is installed and it creates these environments where the API is. Each of these environments has its own Python interpreter. So you can, whatever IDE you may like to use to write Python code, what you have to know is how to reference the right interpreter with the libraries you're interested in using in that. This was just a way to show. This Jupyter Notebook is an easy way to visualize things, show you the code, show you the results, have some other text in there. It's just one of many ways to access the API. You can take any notebook that you're writing online here, you can export this out as a Python file and then go run that in an IDE or set it up as a scheduler, whatever you want to do. So all these other things, like all this stuff, will just be in your script as comments, and you can go wipe it out if you want. So any notebook you do, or you create online, or any of these you're getting to, you can access them as scripts too, just by downloading them.
The example you showed with being able to find out which layers within which map within which app, is that available somewhere?
That it will be. There's a public GitHub repo called, it's Esri / ArcGIS - Python API. And in there is a talks directory. And in there are directories from all the major conferences that we've been to. There's all kinds of notebooks and stuff in any of these folders, and it's all public. You can go get it and do whatever you want with it. And after this conference, so Thursday or Friday or something, there will be a new folder in there that says UC 2018. If you go to this Dev Summit 2018 one and go to the Introduction to Scripting, a lot of the same workflows are in there. It's a little different because there were some new objects that have been added to the API since this script. But yes, so these will all be available just later in the week. Yes?
So like when you add new functionality to say like ArcGIS Online, about how long is it before it shows up in the API?
Whatever's accessible. So if the functionality is available in the ArcGIS Online, well, it depends on it depends, right? Like you can use, if it's in ArcGIS Online, you can use REST programming to get at it. Right. If it hasn't been created as its own module or class or accessible directly through some function in the API, I don't know. It depends on the functionality, right? There's no hard and fast rule as to, they've added feature layer views in ArcGIS Online, so we have to go make a class in the Python API. There is a feature layer views. There's ways to do that in the API, but that was an example. It depends on, I guess, it depends on demand, but so yeah, that answer varies.
Yeah, but generally, the team operates on like 3-month release cycles, so it's pretty agile.
The Python script, after you export it, can you actually publish as a tool?
You mean like a geoprocessing
like-
tool?
Is it a process?
Yeah, we had that discussion.
No, I'm going to say no. Not yet.
Yeah, that's all on the client.
Write that in pencil and come down to the island. But like not directly. You're not going to just be able to download that script and then publish and then create a GP tool from it. Unless you structured it the same way as you would a Python script that would make a script tool in Pro or desktop. Yeah, there'd be nothing preventing that. You just have to structure it correctly. Other questions? Yes.
Do you have any good resources to learn how to like program directly with Python with the REST API directly? Learning resources, because that's a little bit of a hill itself. A little,
No, programming directly against the REST API, whether you're using Python or other language, that is hard.
Yeah.
That's my assessment. That is really hard. I don't know if I mean, if you know Python, then that's your best resource, right? Whatever language. I think REST API, it just seems it's such a matter of like string manipulation, right? To get the right URLs, and that is difficult and can be really clumsy. There are some samples that I can point you to that use the direct REST programming with using, like doing spatial analysis with REST and Python. There's a script, I'd have to hunt it down. I can't remember where it is, but it's like a huge script. And
the functionality is always there.
the functionality is always there in the REST API. I don't know if there's any, hey, here's some tips and tricks for once you've got the URL, here's the best way to program with it. Right? Yeah. That Python request library, if you know that is the easiest thing I've found to make Python requests, because it's much easier than URLlib3 and all those and stringing together all those. The request library handles so much of that for you. So if you're a Python programmer and you're not familiar with requests, that would be the easiest way to do it that I've seen.
Do you have a sample notebook showing how to use those renderer objects to create custom symbology for feature layers?
There are definitely some samples that go through rendering. Like,
How to specify the color or class break,
Yeah.
those kind of things?
David had one he was showing at the booth.
Yeah, I think if you go
On
into
3D,
that,
using 3D.
go to that developers.arcgis.com/Python, look in either the sample notebooks or the guide. The rendering, or I don't think anything's labeled. Try the smart mapping one.
Yeah.
It doesn't have what you need. Or come to the island at some point, because we'll be able to point you right at it.
Yeah, and David Vitale, he has something that he was doing with 3D symbols.
Yeah, it seems super simple. What I want
Yeah.
to just specify a class and color.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not overly complex. You just need to know the right parameter, and then whether you have to structure a dictionary or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the dictionaries are kind of spelled out.
Yeah, the dictionaries are spelled out in the REST API. Like that's the specifics, what parameters have to be there.
Okay.
But so yes, I could sort of help you navigate through that down at the island for
Okay,
sure.
I'm done.
Yes. I'm sorry? No, this is the last intro
We did one
to
earlier.
Python API session. But they are being recorded, so they'll be accessible at some point. Right, go to the info people and
Boom.
tell them.
All you guys go boom.
You can say, I need to hear more from John. He's incredible.